We tend to assume systems are built to reward performance, but in reality, their very structure often guarantees they reward something else entirely. And here's the critical part. This isn't a flaw. It's the system working exactly as it's designed. You probably operate under the assumption that if you do good work, it'll get noticed and rewarded. But that's a dangerous misunderstanding of how large systems actually function. See, systems don't reward some abstract idea of quality. They only reward what they can measure. All right, let's put this into a really simple context. Imagine a team is given a straightforward task: improve productivity. That's the stated high-level goal. Now, productivity is a pretty fuzzy concept, right? How do you actually track it? Well, to make the goal concrete, the organization has to measure it. So they pick something simple and easy to count: the number of reports the team files each week. And just like that, this metric becomes a stand-in, a proxy for the real goal. The next logical step, an incentive gets attached directly to that metric. And this is where the wires get crossed. The system is no longer designed to reward productivity. It's now designed very specifically to reward the act of filing reports. And that distinction, well, it changes everything. So this setup introduces a deep structural conflict that you'll find in almost any organization. It's what's known as the principal-agent problem. First, you have the principal. Think of this as whoever wants a goal achieved: a manager, a board, a client. They're the one who sets the objective. But here's the key: they can't do the work themselves to get it done.
And that's where the agent comes in. This is the person or the team who actually performs the work on the principal's behalf. An employee, a contractor, you get the idea.
The real issue, the thing that drives this entire dynamic, is the information gap that separates them. It's a classic case of what's called asymmetric information. The principal can't see everything the agent is doing. They can't perfectly judge their effort or the true quality of their work. The person doing the work simply knows more than the person who assigned it. Okay, to make this really concrete, let's use a physical metaphor that we'll come back to. Imagine a principal's true goal is to keep the water level stable in a massive, remote reservoir. They can't be there 24/7 watching every single part of it. So how do they solve this? How do they manage something they can't directly see? Well, they have to rely on a proxy, a substitute for direct observation. But as we'll see, this very solution creates a whole new set of problems. A proxy is just a measurable indicator that's supposed to represent the real, unmeasurable goal. Remember our reports filed standing in for productivity? That's a proxy. And while you kind of need them for any complex system to work, they introduce a huge vulnerability. The system itself begins to lose the ability to tell the difference between the measurement and the thing it's supposed to be measuring. This leads us to a really powerful idea known as Goodhart's law, which basically says when a measure becomes a target, it ceases to be a good measure. The moment you start incentivizing people to hit a specific number, their behavior shifts to focus only on that number, and the measurement itself stops telling you what you thought it was telling you. So back to our reservoir. To solve the information gap, the principal installs a single automated depth gauge. From now on, the reading from this one gauge becomes the official, targeted measure of the entire reservoir's stability. And now we get to the feedback loop. As soon as that proxy becomes the basis for a reward, the agent's behavior, well, it adapts. And it does so in a perfectly rational way. The incentives are now reshaping their actions to fit the new official goal, which isn't reservoir stability anymore. It's the metric. So let's say the target is set. Keep the gauge reading at exactly 10 meters. Now the agent has a choice. They could work tirelessly to manage the water levels of the entire vast reservoir, or they could find a more efficient way to make the gauge read 10 meters. So what's the most logical, resource-effective move? They dig a small hole directly underneath the gauge. Now the gauge always reads 10 meters, no matter what the rest of the reservoir is doing. The metric is achieved, the reward is given. And right there, the split is complete. The system's intended goal was to ensure the water was stable, but the incentivized behavior is just to keep that one gauge at 10 meters. The system is no longer rewarding progress toward the real goal, it's just rewarding activity on the proxy. This is a perfect example of what's called a perverse incentive. The structure is now rewarding actions that actively work against the original purpose, and in many cases, it makes the underlying problem even worse. And what's so dangerous about this? From the principal's point of view, looking only at the data, the system is a huge success. The performance reports are flawless. But all the while, the actual system, the reservoir itself, is becoming more and more vulnerable. It's drifting toward a total failure that is completely invisible to the way it's being measured.
So let's zoom out. This kind of outcome isn't an accident. It's not about a few bad employees or a broken process. This is the system operating with perfect, cold logic. It's failure by design. This kind of failure emerges from a few key ingredients that are always present. You have information gaps, you have the need to measure things, that leads to a reliance on proxies, and finally, you have rational people optimizing their behavior based on those proxies. Put them all together, and this outcome is almost inevitable.
And it's really important to see that nobody here is being stupid or malicious. The individual actors are being perfectly rational. The principal chose a measurable target to manage a complex goal. That makes sense. The agent acted efficiently to meet that target and get rewarded. That also makes sense.
But here's the paradox of complex systems. When you add up all of these perfectly rational local decisions, you get a completely irrational outcome at the global level. The system hits its target perfectly, while simultaneously failing at its true purpose. So the takeaway here is that the system isn't broken. It's doing exactly what it was built to do. It was designed to measure and reward the appearance of performance, and that's precisely what it's achieving. The proxy has completely replaced the original goal. The vulnerability isn't a bug in the system, it's a core feature.